Welcome, everybody, to the fourth and final of our awards and conference series. Today, themed around building assessments for the future. What I'd like to do now is move on to our keynote presentation. And I'm delighted to be joined today by Charles Fadel, founder and chairman of the Center for Curriculum Redesign in Boston, in America. Charles founded the Centre in 2011, and it's a not-for-profit organisation dedicated to improving education by focusing on what students should learn to succeed in the 21st century. And in parallel to that, if that's not enough time and focus for Charles, he's also a visiting scholar at Harvard Graduate School for Education. And before that, spent 12 years working for Cisco as their lead for education.
We're all trying to get to a modern world where we need to measure technical competencies, but also skills and character qualities, meaning social, emotional, 21st century skills. So this is what we started doing. And just quickly to introduce my center, we're here to make education more relevant, and I don't have to expand on that. We're partnered with key global players, including the OECD and a few others. As you can see all the logos here. And we are working on both sides of the coin, meaning changing what should be taught, as well as the assessments that go hand in hand with them, because, as you all know so well, scorecards drive behavior. Pretty much like in the corporate world. If it's not on the scorecard, no one cares. If it's on the scorecard, everyone pays attention. So we might as well change the scorecard. When I wrote 21st Century Skills, it was clearly a success around the world, but a mitigated one, in the sense that everyone has embedded language in their curriculum in one way, shape, or form, but it is a Tower of Babel. Everyone has their own view of what we meant, although we tried to be as clear as possible, but somehow the message didn't go through. And it's a giant mess worldwide. Here's an example of just one framework and what kind of a giant mess it is, in the sense that they mix all sorts of things together. Why? Because these are typically created by a few people in a room in a few hours, and they don't have time to research these things properly. So what are the consequences? We have imprecise outcomes because we don't have a clear framework. We have fragmentation because we have, thousands of different frameworks. And of course, from an assessment perspective, we're unable to scale because we have this chasm there. So there's been very, very slow progress worldwide. I'm an electrical engineer by training, and this is what came to me. It's like, wow, everyone talks about the same thing, but in just slightly annoying different ways, like power sockets. They're all slightly different around the world, just enough to make them incompatible, and yet they're still vehicling the same basal information of, power supply here. So we came up with something that was comprehensive, that of course took account knowledge, listed the appropriate skills, listed the appropriate character qualities, and the meta-learning abilities. These 12 parameters you see at the bottom, between skills, character, and meta-learning, are what we call the competencies. We wanted to make sure that they were as orthogonal or uncorrelated as possible. We did quantitative analyses, we did qualitative analyses, and then we tested against Finland. And oh, by the way, you can detect that the curiosity column is empty. We tested against Brazil, we tested against Microsoft, any framework out there, you can test with this Rosetta Stone of sorts. We tested even against Bureau of Labor Statistics demand. And you can see that knowledge, including its psychomotor equivalent, are necessary but not sufficient. Jobs require resilience, courage, collaboration, critical thinking. To conclude, I want to mention that this is really important for us in assessment, because if we think about the state of the world, one can look at this analogy, this logical analogy, right? So lack of education or poor education is at the root of human problems. Everything we see around us is related to a lack of ethics, a lack of empathy, a lack of critical thinking, and so on and so forth. And yet, it is assessments that define the education we get, because everyone is geared towards being measured in one way, shape, or form. Scorecards drive behavior. So if we have an incomplete scorecard, it's certainly not going to drive the right behavior. So we're missing the right assessments for the right competencies. And therefore, the consequence is it's our problem to solve. If we don't have the right assessments embedded everywhere, then we're going to have the wrong behavior by humans, because these competencies do not end up being taught.
I'm conscious that, if you look back, and not very far at all, to when 21st century skills or soft skills started to appear on the landscape, I think policymakers and educators struggled with that a little bit, perhaps because of the disconnect between a curriculum and assessment, as you were describing. But I was curious as to see whether or not you come across any examples of places that are starting to make positive moves towards that.
Yes and no, meaning the Brookings study has shown that a lot of places want to do this, but how many have actually been serious about it? From Singapore to Finland, even the best examples out there show that they're leaving their teachers to figure it out. So imagine being a teacher having never been trained to these competencies. And if you are trained, it's some kind of horizontal academic training about this is what critical thinking is, or this is what communication is. And then good luck to you. Just throw in the classroom and figure out how to embed critical thinking in mathematics. So what happens? You have teachers who think, well, I think that just because I'm teaching mathematics, I'm automatically teaching critical thinking. And that's so not true. So the key here is to educate the teachers that these things have specific pedagogical practices that can be embedded explicitly. So we are very, intense. We call the need for this to be explicit, deliberate, comprehensive, systematic, and demonstrable.
We're now going to move on to the first award of the afternoon, and this is for the Best Research Project Award. And without research, many things that we move to change through time wouldn't happen. The Research Award this year is very kindly sponsored by NCFE, and I'd like to introduce Dan Howard, Director of Operations for NCFE.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you for the introduction, and it's an absolute pleasure for NCFE to be supporting and sponsoring the Research Award this year. In terms of who NCFE are, we are an educational services charity, and we specialise in vocational and technical education, predominantly in the development and certification of qualifications, as well as production of various types of assessment and learning content and resources.
Hi everyone, my name is Gareth Hopkins. I'm an assessment solutions specialist and the lead technical officer at the E-Assessment Association. This year I had the privilege of being on the panel of judges for the Best Research Award category along with my 3 other judges. From the entries we shortlisted 2 outstanding pieces of research. In no particular order they were Purdue University and RM with Learning by Evaluation with RM Compare and Brightpath Assessment. Both entries made significant use of comparative judgment software, but in different ways.
Picking up on some of the notes from the judges of this category, the judges really enjoyed learning more about Brightpath assessments. Clearly a well-designed product that's been underpinned by a body of excellent research, and it's clearly a product that has a big impact upon teaching and learning. And the entry from Purdue University and RM was a concrete piece of research that was well thought out and designed. The research was presented very clearly with a hypothesis, methodology, results and impact. The piece of research had impressive results and shows great promise for the future. The judges were unanimous in their decision, and that the winner for the Best Research 2021 is Purdue University and RM with their entry Learning by Evaluation. Congratulations.
Wonderful news, I'm sure, for Purdue and RM. Dan, thank you very much.
And thanks to the judges for this category. So Sarah, Eleanor, Angela and Gareth who created that video. So, I know it was a difficult piece to judge, but congratulations to both finalists and to Purdue for the win.